Hey everyone, it's Nikki from the Ops Shop, and I am here to talk to you about Google eSignatures feature and some interesting ways that you can incorporate the software into your onboarding. Now, if you've ever gone all in on a fancy CRM because you wanted to solve all of your problems, only to end up frustrated a couple months later, then this talk is for you because I have definitely been there. I've invested in softwares to do contracts and send reminders and do bookings and my automatic invoicing and forms and brochures and proposals. And it was supposed to make everything easier, but really it just made everything a lot more complicated and it got really expensive. If there's anything that I have learned in my 15 years of working in operations and systems, is that a lot of times we go too far down a road because we think it is the solution that we need without stopping to really assess what it is that we need. So the reality for folks is that they're not going to use 80% of the features within their CRM. The cost keeps going up, especially if you are a user of a very popular contract client platform that just increased its price 300%. And we can spend a lot more of our time managing the software than actually managing our business and providing an exceptional client experience. At some point, you might just realize that I don't need something fancy. I just need something easy, clean, and if you're like me, something you can make a little bit pretty. That is exactly what Google eSignatures can do. The best part of this newly released feature is that it is legally binding like other softwares in the US, in the EU, and many other regions under laws like eSign. So I am not a lawyer, so be sure to check out the fine print to make sure that this will work for you. E-signatures are available within Google Workspace plans at no additional cost if you are business standard, plus, or any of the enterprise plans. It's nice because if you're already paying for those and using things like Google's appointment scheduler, e-signatures is going to be included with that. What I'm not going to do today is give you a very detailed tech tutorial on how to use this part of Google Workspace. It is pretty easy and self-explanatory. I'm going to give you a really quick overview of how it works, but I want to spend time on how can we use this creatively? How can we surprise and delight our clients and still make sure that all those T's get crossed and the I's get dotted? So as a brief tutorial for how this works, you can essentially take a Google Doc. This is an example of my client services agreement, and you're going to put in signature fields. How you do that is by clicking on Tools, and then you're going to scroll down to eSignature. When you bring this up, this is a templated version. I'm just going to manage signers. I'm always going to have the client, and then I'm going to have me. And then I'm just going to drag and drop into the Google Doc the various fields that I might need, and then assign who needs to fill them out. For example, you can see everything here in blue is to be filled out by the client. Anything in green is for me. So what I have done here in my typical setup is I go create a templated version of my document and I drop in what fields I will need to have and who should be signing them. So if you scroll through here, you can see things like this first page is going to collect client information, the initial, and then I try to keep the rest of the contract pretty much the same so I don't have to update a lot of things. But when I scroll down to Schedule A, this is where I'll put scope of work and exclusions in. Schedule B, this is where I'll put my payment terms in. And then when we get to the last page here, you can see there's signature fields. The blue is for client, green is for me. So the first thing I'm going to do is set up the template in this way. Then when I want to actually use it for a client, all I'm going to do is make a copy, name it specifically for that client, and then just update the contract. I have this field in my footer. Anything highlighted in yellow just for me is my quick note of, hey, Nikki, you're going to have to update that before you send it out. And then what I'm going to do is click on Request eSignature. And this is where I can name the document, put in the recipient for who has to sign it, any message, hey, Susie, could you please sign this or please see attached contract for your review? And then I'm going to request eSignature. And if you need to, you can choose languages for your audit trail. But that's essentially how you set this up. Now, the interesting thing with this is that you can also do PDFs. If you like to make things that are super visual, you can design something in Canva, download it as a PDF, and then upload it to your Google Drive. From there, all you have to do is click on the PDF, click on the three dots, and you're going to see eSignature. That is going to open up the PDF in the same sort of format where you're going to insert fields for signer one. If you need to add multiple signers, you'll put this in. And then it's the same thing where this is not a contract. This is just a sample PDF. You're just going to drag and drop fields into the PDF, and then it's going to work the same. This is definitely great for if, again, you want something that's really pretty. I'm a visual person. My brand is a little bright. It's a little kooky. It's a little weird. And this gives me a lot of freedom to play around with format and visuals. I can include videos. I can include photos, and make working with me and having to go through these regimented documentation, like the really important stuff, it makes it still interesting. Now, you might be wondering, for some of these things, Nikki, why don't I just use a Google form? You can absolutely use a Google form. In many ways, Google Forms have some benefits. You can export answers to a spreadsheet. I think Google eSignatures is more beneficial. There's a little bit more buy-in, and it's a little bit more of a commitment, especially when it comes to some of the other templates or other ideas for Google eSignatures that I'm going to show you today. There's some really cool stuff you can do in Google eSignatures, and that's what we're going to look through now. Now let's talk about 3 different ways you can use Google eSignatures to give some extra life to your client onboarding. The first example is the example that I just showed you. It is a client services agreement or a contract. You know, it's not the most glamorous thing typically, but you have the option to make it really glamorous. I've put in different visuals, I've put in different colors and fonts, and it just makes it feel a little bit more vibrant. One of the other things I've come up with as an option for you, as an idea, is what I like to call the client pledge. So you can see again here, this I just built in Google Docs. I put in a header image, I put in some text, and this might be something interesting to play around with if you want to really make the client aware and invested in their own success. The example I've given here is if you're a business coach and maybe you have a client and you want them to like, yes, I'm all in, I'm so excited, and give something a little bit more beyond just a services agreement. Yes, I agree to the terms and conditions of this contract. If you want to give them a little bit more of a buy-in, and if you want to give them some guidance and examples and prepare them mentally and emotionally for what is to come. I think it is important with client experiences that they focus on being well held rather than hand holding. It can be really exhausting to hand hold someone through a process when it's not meant to be that. So something like a client pledge or a client code of conduct or this is how we operate here type of pledge can be really impactful so that clients understand exactly what they need to do and how they need to show up to ensure they will have the best possible experience and get results with you. So these are just some ChatGPT generated examples, but it's by saying, hey, I'm going to show up in these ways and have success. So you can put in whatever traits, qualities, tasks, requirements, recommendations that you think are best, and then insert some signature fields for your client to sign. Sometimes I think the best possible result is not just saying to a client, hey, I need you to do this, but it is also me saying to the client, hey, here's what you can trust and expect from me, so that we're all on the same page, so that we are speaking the same language, so that we are using the same references. You also have the option to include a second page or a second section. It's like, hey, client, you're awesome. Thank you so much for signing up and paying me. Here's what you can expect from me. And here's what I'm going to do. And then both of us have to sign this. Again, I think sometimes people and clients look at contracts as being a very one-sided agreement. They are there to protect the business. So something like a client pledge is a really great way to say, no, this is a relationship. We are both in it. We both have to come to the table to get things done. And here's exactly what we can do and how we're going to do it to make that happen. But you can see here, these are assigned to me as the ops shop, and these fields are assigned to the client. And then I would just do the same thing in terms of requesting signature. The third example of what we can use Google eSignatures for is what I'm just calling a creative sign-off. If you've ever worked in a marketing agency or other type of business where the output is something that the client needs to provide approval on, then this can be a really impactful thing to add into your onboarding process as well as your ongoing client management process. And it doesn't always have to be creative. Again, it's any time that the client needs to say yes or no before things can move on. You will see this in things like marketing agencies. Let's say I am designing a logo for you, or maybe you're a social media management company and maybe you're doing content calendars or you're building out a particular campaign. This can be really great for that. So the idea is that, again, I've used the table to kind of put in some information: project name, client, email, date. This is when I need to hear back from the client. And this is me putting together a section on, hey, client, thank you so much. Here's what is here for your review. And I could have the option here to include, maybe I do a Loom video walkthrough of an entire campaign. Here is a sample image on, maybe I want their approval on it. Ooh, isn't this cool? So this is where you can kind of give the client a couple different things to look at. Maybe you want to do some mock-ups. Maybe you want them to look at a landing page. Maybe you want them to look at an email sequence. You can link all of that here or actually include the visuals. If any of you have ever worked in a creative agency, sometimes you'll present like a logo concept to a client and say, great, we'd love your feedback. And they're like, I don't like the color. It's like, yeah, this is only the black and white stage. We're just looking at format. So one of the things you can also add to this, again, to help both sides show up to the best of their ability, is provide feedback on how to give feedback. Tell them what you need. Tell them what is useful. Tell them what can help you move it forward so that everybody loves the direction. So that's a great thing you can put here. Then I've just put in a text field. So again, going to tools, going to eSignature here. And I've just put in a text field, drag and drop, and I've assigned it to the client for them to just put in all of their feedback on this stuff here. And then same deal, I use the tables to keep myself organized. I have a signature and a date field. I have reviewed all the information and I'm signing it back. If you wanted, as the company, as the business, you could also put in a section here that says, I acknowledge that I have received this client's feedback. And then you would send another one of these over when it is time to present your updated version. So how does all of this tie into onboarding? How does this all tie into customer journey? So a great onboarding experience isn't about having the biggest bells and whistles, the most automated of all automated things. And it's not about flooding clients with documents and tasks and updates. It's about guiding them smoothly through a process and making sure that they have everything they need to feel heard, to feel like they understand, and they feel confident in moving forward with you. E-signatures are a part of that experience that may seem a little bit, it's an e-signature, it's a contract, how cool can it really be? But really, they are a way to add in that extra care, that extra personality, that extra creativity without a ton of extra tech, friction, or complicated automation. I think that Google eSignatures is this middle ground between, here's a Google form, click, 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 and please log into this expensive CRM portal that you'll never use and that I pay out the wazoo for on a monthly basis. So if you want to try this out for yourself, I have created these templates for you to download, play around with. This QR code up here on the screen, if you want to scan that, you can head on over, enter in your name and email address, and I'm going to give you access to a Google folder that has all of the templates I've walked through with you today available in there. You can check them out, and then if they look like something you want to play around with or customize, you can just make a copy of them to your own Google Drive, or just use them as inspiration to go forward and start with your own type of e-signature document. Like many things in business, my general philosophy is to FAFO. I'm gonna fuck around and find out, because I want to play with things. I want to experiment with things. I want to see what works. I want to really play mad scientist behind the curtain and just see what I can make happen that will make people feel like they are getting an experience from me, from Nikki, and not just from a piece of software that I have set up beautifully. So if you do download these templates, if you do decide to create your own with e-signatures, I would love for you to tell me how it goes. So reach out to me on social media at I am Nikki Mick on Instagram or Nikki McKnight on LinkedIn, or you can reply back to the email that you will get when you download the templates. And here is that QR code again for you. What I want to leave you with today is sometimes we don't need more software. I know I'm an operations and tech person, and I'm saying put down the software. Sometimes what we need is not fancy. Sometimes what we need is basic. Sometimes what we need is just a better way to use the things that we already have. Google eSignatures is a really simple, low-tech way to turn agreements into real momentum so the clients don't just say yes, they don't just sign on the dotted line, they actually follow through. And they recognize and appreciate that they are getting a service from you. Cheers.